This is interesting from the Bloomberg campaign statement. We are focused on primary and the debate, not a VP vice president speculation. But here's what.
Speculation. Joining me right now, former White House chief strategist and the War Room host Steve Bannon, the man who called
I like Steve Bannon a lot. I think he's sharp.
This back in August on this program. Steve, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us. So you knew Hillary Clinton was going to come into this race. You said it and everybody was thinking, what? Are you kidding me? But you were right if this is true. Assess the situation, the combination of Bloomberg and Clinton.
Look, Matt Drudge put his name on this yesterday. This was original reporting from Matt Drudge. If Drudge puts his name on something and there hasn't been any denials, it's money good. I'm not saying it's going to happen, and Matt Drudge is not saying it's happening, but there are clearly discussions going on. You really haven't had a denial from the Bloomberg camp.
There are clearly discussions going on. Haven't had a denial from either source. And because Matt Drudge is reporting it, probably good.
And you certainly haven't had a denial from the Hillary Clinton camp. And I think this goes back to the heart of why the Democratic Party has lost its way. The Democratic Party does not understand today, 8 months from Election Day, why they lost 2016. They don't understand about managed decline of our elites. They don't understand why Donald Trump won. They don't understand the message of Donald Trump. They've spent 3 years trying to destroy him. They failed to destroy him. 8 months from the election, they have nothing. So now they have a...
They have nothing, he says. But listen to this next part. He says he comes from a family of Democrats.
Moderate Republican mayor oligarch of New York combining with a globalist, a multi-time failure presidential candidate to try to do a combination. And I think that this...
Now, he says a moderate New York Democrat and a globalist, Hillary Clinton. Interesting terminologies, but I think he's probably correct in that judgment.
Shows you the desperation of the Democratic Party and really the personal vendetta that the Clintons and Michael Bloomberg have against President Trump. This is not about taking the country forward.
Vendetta. It's not about taking the country forward, quote unquote.
This is not about taking the country to the next level. This is not about helping working class people. This is a personal vendetta. And Democrats, and I come from a family of Democrats, the Democratic Party should be ashamed of itself that it's in this situation.
Well, you say oligarchs. I thought it was really interesting yesterday when that news first broke that he's considering choosing Hillary Clinton. A lot of people questioned, well, wait a second. You're not supposed to have two candidates from the same state. They're both from New York. So that was very quickly changed by Michael Bloomberg apparently saying, well, that's okay. I've got a home in Colorado and I've got a home in Florida. I'll change my address to say that I'm from Florida. Can he do that? Just say.
This is what oligarchs do. Remember, on Tuesday night, March 3rd, in a couple of weeks, at midnight, when the California polls close out west, the Democratic Party will have an independent socialist in a moderate or liberal mayor, a Republican mayor of New York as the two top guys running for the primary. There won't really be any Democrats around. This is why Hillary Clinton, and I believe that Bill Clinton's fingerprints are all over this. I think you can see Bill Clinton trying to get Hillary back in the game. And I said back in August, and I've said over for a year since, remember, Trump wouldn't be impeached if Michael Bloomberg hadn't put the $100 million up for the Dirty 30, for those House seats. That, this shows you that they have been thinking this through and that there was always going to be a reaction to Bloomberg buying the Democratic Party. He's doing a leveraged buyout of the Democratic Party. And the people, there was going to be a...
Hey, what's up?
By, co-opting the Clintons now and working with the Clintons. The Bernie people, the Bernie movement have to understand now they are detested and despised as the deplorables are in the Trump movement. And I think this is a wake-up.
Wow, quote unquote, Sanders are as despised as the Trumpers. Wow, what a statement. Let's hear that again.
Despised as the deplorables are in the Trump movement. And I think this is a wake-up call for all of Bernie's people to say, hey, we are detested by Bloomberg. We're detested by the Clintons. Here we are, the front runner. They don't give us any respect. The liberal media doesn't give us any respect. I think the Bernie people now have to start to look for Donald Trump as their voice.
Well, look at this. He's in the lead. Bernie is. They don't want him in the lead.
Donald Trump as their voice. How is that even going to be possible?
That Hillary Clinton can't keep trashing him. Hillary herself said nobody likes him. Why do you think Bill Clinton's fingerprints are all over this? Talk to us about that a bit.
First off, I think Bill Clinton, back from 16, Bill Clinton was one that said the hipsters in Brooklyn do not understand what Donald Trump's doing. Donald Trump's going into Michigan. Donald Trump's going to Wisconsin. He's going to Pennsylvania. He's talking about returning America to its greatness, built upon the shoulders of the working class and middle class. Clinton, who's a master politician, saw that Donald Trump was resonating with working class Democrats and would win those states.
Wow.
The hipsters in Brooklyn, this is why Hillary Clinton never went. The hipsters in Brooklyn thought they had a better plan. They thought they could micro-target this thing. And that's why Clinton has been seething, just like Hillary has, from that time. But here's the important point. They haven't learned the lessons of Trump. All they've done for 3 years is try to destroy President Trump. They haven't tried to work with him to take the country forward. They haven't tried to work with him on trade. They haven't tried to work with him on bringing jobs back to America.
Yeah.
They haven't tried to work with him on the wall.
She wants to impeach him again. I just was, look, I'm not questioning your thinking because you've been so spot on throughout all of this, but I'm just wondering,
we were pretty mocked when we said Bloomberg and Clinton.
Incredible. You were spot on, but this is also coming a day after a Washington Post story about Michael Bloomberg, and the Post story said this: Mike Bloomberg for years has battled women's allegations of profane, sexist comments from the Washington Post. I actually had dinner with a woman from Bloomberg the other night, and she said to me, Maria, it's horrible. I can't even get a step forward. They're so misogynistic. I didn't realize it was that bad, but this article is bad for Michael Bloomberg. Are you sure this whole trial balloon of Hillary Clinton is just not to distract from this article?
The timing of this is definitely to take off both the Washington Post and the New York Times. Here's the thing about the Bloomberg thing I think is so shocking. And once again, it's going to test the core principles of the Democratic Party, of whether they're going to have an oligarch come in and buy it. They're supposed to be about the Me Too movement and Time's Up movement. And here's what you have. Different than President Trump's kind of offhand remarks, the locker room talk of President Trump, which they triggered him and they went nuts.
Yeah.
The problem with these Bloombergs, it's premeditated and it's cruel. What he said to these women about aborting their children, what he said to the women about their looks, what he said to these women about the African-American nannies. This was cruel, it was premeditated, and it's over years and years and years. This is not offhand comments in locker room talk. And that's why you're going to have a gut check with the Democratic Party to see if somebody like this that's had a history of this can come in as an oligarch and buy the Democratic Party, and the Bernie people ought.
Now, Bloomberg has a history of this for decades, according to Brennan. Wow.
To be outraged about this. It shows you the Democratic apparatus and establishment has no respect for you.
So he's willing to spend up to $2 billion to take out Donald Trump. As you know, he has said that. He doesn't want any billionaires, though, by the way, in America anyway. How much of a threat is Clinton, Bloomberg together against Donald Trump?
Listen, anytime you're going to put, he said $2 billion if he's not the nominee. He'll have unlimited amount of money to do this. He has a personal vendetta against the president. So is Hillary Clinton. As long as they don't get to the thesis of why Donald Trump won, which is return to greatness, and focusing on working class people and middle class issues, Donald Trump's going to win. But I got to tell you, this is teeing up to be the nastiest, most brutal campaign in American history. People say it's the most important election. I don't know if it's the most important election, but I can tell you, it's going to be the nastiest and most brutal. And I think the Trump.
I believe the CBO.
Great job right now.
That's interesting. He said, quote unquote, this is going to be the dirtiest election we've ever seen. Wow, what a statement. What a statement.
You have to go no huddle offense. Every day is like your last day. You have to play hard. President Trump is going to win and should win, but I got to tell you, Bloomberg's money, the Clinton apparatus, and the mainstream media selling out. Remember, if the mainstream media had done their jobs, for the last year and a half, we've been told Biden, Warren, Biden, Warren, Biden, Warren. They're not events. They're not prepared to take on Trump. They try to destroy him. They try to prop up other people that can take him on. The Democratic Party sold out to an oligarch, and this is going to be a nasty, brutal campaign.
And you said this is an incredible New York story. I mean, Clinton, Trump, Bloomberg from New York, it's unbelievable. Real quick, we got to jump, but in terms of this coronavirus, now the New York Times reporting that Xi Jinping was on it early. I mean, they still went to the White House, as I've been saying.
He knew it, like you've been saying, it's a week beforehand. Also, Foxconn's announced, I think they're not opening the factories tomorrow. On March 3rd, I think you'll see a conversion of an oligarch and a virus. This virus is very important. The president's taken great action so far, but I think people got to start focusing on the impact to the economy. The Chinese economy, I think, is imploding.
All right, we will leave it there. Steve, it's always great to have you.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
Steve Bannon says the Chinese economy is imploding. And we had another billionaire said that it was imploding, this coronavirus. So this is going to put tremendous financial pressure and political pressure on China. We'll see what happens this year on China and next year. Wow. All right, this is McCarthy. He's saying Bloomberg cannot win it alone. Wow.
Nomination against Bernie without cheating. So he's going to bring Hillary in because remember, Hillary cheated Bernie last time to win the nomination.
And Hillary's going to cheat Bernie out of it again. Bernie's got to be toast. They're going to cheat him out of a nomination again. But remember, he was paid off, took his money and ran, his tail between his legs. He's worthless.
The chair of the party had to resign the night before the convention because they were caught. Secondly, it tells you about Bloomberg himself, that he believes he can manipulate democracy. Remember what he did as mayor. He got the city council to change term limits. He doesn't believe the 12th Amendment applies to him. He'll just move to Colorado. And thirdly, it also means something different, the hypocrisy of Democrats themselves. They cry about money, but they took more than $100 million from Bloomberg last time to buy Congress. And what did it buy him? It bought him a new congressman by the name of T.J. Cox out in California. He just got a $144,000 tax lien for the IRS. He doesn't want to pay his taxes, but he votes to raise yours. You got Bernie Sanders, who's a millionaire, who doesn't believe anybody else should have money. It's just those three major things that is wrong with this Democratic Party and why President Trump has built a strong economy and will win regardless who the Democrats, if they cheat Bernie and have somebody else. The best thing the Democrats should do for their convention is have a pay-per-view, because it's going to be the most interesting fight internally and cheating that we've ever seen in politics.
Well, you know, it's interesting because within the Democratic Party, some of them don't want Bernie.
The most interesting cheating and internal struggles that we've ever seen in the Democratic Party. Will it implode it? Will it destroy it? Will it rip it up? I hope so.
Bernie, we know that. Hillary Clinton's trashing him all the time. Some of them don't want Bloomberg either because of all of that money. How far will that money go, Congressman? Because we know that he gave the Democrats $100+ million last year, and it worked. They took the House majority.
You know what's most interesting? Follow the tweets of Michael Bloomberg. He tweeted that he became a Democrat just days before he released the $100 million. Was he trying to buy a nomination a few years later to run for president? Interesting question, and wonder why he did it. But what's interesting here is that the Democrats who are afraid of Bernie Sanders because he's a socialist, I don't know why. Speaker Pelosi has already surrendered to the socialists. More than half of their entire conference has already co-sponsored Medicare for All, socialized medicine. Think also that they have a majority of them that also already supported a Green New Deal that will destroy our economy.
Well, let me ask you about your money, because GOP fundraising has been going real well. I know you're going to be catching up with President Trump, and then you will travel to California. You're going to bring the president to Bakersfield, your hometown. Got a big fundraiser coming up, hosted by Larry Ellison. What's the status in terms of your own fundraising, and what kind of a reaction are you getting from donors post-impeachment?
The thing we're seeing most of all is the importance of winning the House. Because if we do not change the House, they'll continue to impeach this president. Look what they just spent their entire time wasting this majority, and now you have Eric Swalwell, you have Adam Schiff still talking about impeachment. If you want any of that to stop, people have to go to takethehouse.com and make a difference, because Michael Bloomberg will write another $2 billion check to try to not only keep the House, but win the presidency. The president goes out there to the American public, and he's setting new records. But what's more important, the record that he's setting, is on turnout. Democrat turnout is down.
Now, McCarthy says something very interesting. He says Democratic turnout is down. Interesting. Democratic turnout is down.
is breaking not only Republican turnout, but any president running for re-election in Iowa and New Hampshire. Now, I've been able to raise some money, but the Democrats have set new records as well. That's a concern with Bloomberg writing $2 billion. If you want to stop this and actually have a Congress that works with President Trump, but more importantly, works for America, you got to take thehouse.com and do something about it.
Let me ask you about what the announcement you're going to be making with the president. You're doing a big effort around water. Your county is what? The #1 agricultural county.
Kern County is #1 in value of agriculture. And if there's anything that coronavirus should actually follow what we need, the security of our food supply, making sure that it's grown in America, that it's safe and secure. We have a real concern in California because we send most of our water out to the ocean and sending it down to Southern California to our farmlands in the San Joaquin Valley and others. This president has worked greatly using science, not based on politics, but on science, to allow to have more of that water stay with the Californians and America to make sure we're secure in our food supply as we move forward.
There was a meeting that Nancy Pelosi had. She said that she wants the conversation to start shifting to the economy. What can you tell us about that behind-the-scenes meeting that Nancy Pelosi led? Is she changing her tune to actually talk about what's important to the American people now?
Well, that's a real sign that the civil war inside the Democratic Congress. They're very upset that they have nothing to run for re-election upon except impeachment. And so they got together and they said, what should we do? Well, politically, they said, we should go after the economy. But another thing, they're continuing to lie about it when we're flourishing in the economy. 61% of Americans are better off than they were 3 years ago. No president running for re-election has ever seen these numbers. 91% of Americans are happy with their life. This is a real concern for the Democrats because they have 30 Democrats sitting in seats that Trump carried, and they're going to lose, and it only takes 18 to change the House.
Congressman, we'll be watching. Thanks very much for being here this morning.
Thank you, Maria.
Interesting. We'll see what happens. We need the House back, though. My greatest concern is socialism is going to be bigger than Trump, and I think it's going to take over this nation in time and destroy it, or come very close to destroying it. It already is close now, but I think there are too many idiots and too many elitists that are going to try to destroy this country through socialism. They've been working on it very successfully for the last 70 years, and it is going to be one heck of a battle in the future between conservative-minded people and liberal socialism. That's the battle of the future. God help us. What's going to happen before March 31st? I don't know if God has got any insight, but I believe some major events are going to happen in less than a month's time.
This past week, the former FBI Director Andrew McCabe has escaped all charges from the DOJ in its investigation of his lack of candor and leaks in the Hillary Clinton investigation. Joining me right now is Fox News contributor, former Republican South Carolina Congressman, and former House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy. Trey, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We are lucky to have you this morning as you are one of only 2 congressmen that were able to see the redacted information, 2 congressmen from the GOP that were seeing the redacted documents that were so important to both of those investigations, the Hillary Clinton investigation and the Trump collusion Russia investigation. Why do you think McCabe is getting off here from the DOJ? He's already admitted to lying, right, Trey? Is there something we don't know that the DOJ is clearing Andrew McCabe?
Well, Andy McCabe is not being indicted for a very discrete fact pattern, which is simply the leaking of information to bolster his own credibility during the Clinton investigation. That's it. And we should have known weeks ago when they were having trouble getting an indictment. If you're having trouble getting an indictment, then there's no way you're going to get a conviction. You've seen a change in the U.S. Attorney's.
So they had trouble getting an indictment on this guy. And so they said, just forget it. So what else is going to change this?
office in the District of Columbia, so he escapes indictment for that narrow fact pattern. But that has nothing to do with FISA and the initiation of Russia and any other potential misconduct that Andy McCabe may have engaged in. That's a really narrow, discrete fact pattern that he's not being indicted for.
So it could actually be that he's cooperating with John Durham, or that he's looking, or a suspect in the John Durham now criminal probe. Is that right?
Well, he's certainly somebody that John Durham would want to talk to, and it could range. It can go the whole range from he didn't do anything wrong, and he did admit to misrepresentations, but that's a little bit different than intentionally misrepresenting or an intentionally false statement. It could be that he's just simply not guilty. It could be that he's cooperating with John Durham, or it could be that he's still under investigation for other fact patterns not related to that discrete one with the leak in the Clinton investigation.
I see. Let me ask you about John Durham and what he is looking at now, because we're all waiting to see what's going on, and we understand that he's been looking at John Brennan's communication.
All right, so what's Durham going to bring out? I still believe Durham is going to bring something out before the end of March, but we can only wait and see what's going to happen.
Then the head of the CIA. In your view, what is John Durham looking at?
Marie, he's looking at three things: the factual predicate for this Russia investigation, and I'm not talking about the summer of 2016. I'm talking about stuff that happened in late 2015 and early 2016. Remember, the DOJ and the FBI told Paul Ryan and Devin Nunes and myself repeatedly and exclusively that nothing happened before June of 2016. No payments were made, no contacts with the Trump campaign. I'm sure John Durham is looking to see whether or not that's true. He's also looking at the FISA process and misrepresentations made to the FISA court. I think he's also looking at that ICA, that intelligence community assessment.
Now, it's interesting that he says that Durham is looking before the 2016, probably 2015, 2014 stuff, payments being made through Ukraine or Russia or elsewhere. That's interesting.
That John Brennan got done towards the end of the Barack Obama tenure to make sure whether or not that was thoroughly investigated and whether or not all the right information made its way into that ICA. Yeah. Three important things, three separate things.
And you were among those questioning a number of witnesses to try to get to the bottom of this. You actually questioned John Brennan, and John Brennan told you straight out the dossier had nothing to do with the FISA process. We now know that was one of the single things they used, the dossier, to actually get those FISA warrants. But I also want to show this counter-intel activity timeline that we have put together here. And it shows that General Flynn was paid to speak in Moscow in December of 2015. And George Papadopoulos was invited to a conference in Rome in March of 16. And then Mifsud, Joseph Mifsud, told Papadopoulos in April of 2016 that Russia had Hillary Clinton emails. The list goes on and on, April, May, all the way up to July 31st, when the actual counterintelligence probe started, according to the FBI. So what about all this other stuff happening at the end of 15 and early 16? That these are serious informants running up against Trump campaign people. How do you explain that if the investigation started in July, Trey?
Well, thank goodness I don't have to. The folks at the FBI and the DOJ, they're the ones that are going to have to explain whether or not Michael Flynn speaking in Russia was something they were looking at separate, or whether or not they were looking at that because he was an advisor to the Trump campaign. I could not be more clear. We asked the DOJ and the FBI repeatedly, did anything happen before June of 2016? And
now, get this. He says they asked it repeatedly if anything happened before June of 2016, and they repeatedly said no. I believe we're going to find out that things were going on before June of 2016. And Trey Gowdy seems to think so too.
We asked them, just as we asked them in a skiff in the basement of the Capitol, and the answer was always the same. Nothing happened with respect to the Trump campaign before June of 2016. And if something did happen, then either the FBI misrepresented facts to us, or it wasn't the FBI, it was another agency that was doing it. Both of those are important to know, and John Durham, I hope, is going to be able to answer that question.
And of course, if it's the CIA, we know why John Durham is looking at John Brennan, as he was all over TV saying that the president committed treason when in fact he was running the CIA. Perhaps the CIA was sending these informants in. Real quick before you go, Trey, got to ask you about the exculpatory evidence that you have seen. You broke the news on this program over a year ago that there was, you said that there was a transcript of a conversation between George Papadopoulos, I said that, not you, and an informant, where basically George Papadopoulos said to the guy, no, I would never do that. That's treason. What else do we need to know about that exculpatory piece of evidence?
Well, I want you to imagine this, hypothetically, Maria. Imagine that you're accused of a crime, and this is your response. Number one, I didn't do it. So factually, that's pretty important. Number one, I didn't do it. Number two, I would never do that because it is a crime for which you can be put to death, and it is a crime against a country that I love. All right, if that's your response to an accusation that you engaged in improper conduct, that is textbook exculpatory evidence. You really can't draw up a better piece of exculpatory evidence than I didn't do it, I would never do it. It's a crime to do it. So if that happened, then the court needed to know about it.
This is more, a little more information that you gave us in so many words. That is that transcript that you have to believe John Durham is looking at, and everyone is looking at in charge, because it was not given to the FISA court to get those warrants. They said that 2 of the 4 warrants were unlawful. I'm putting my money that perhaps more than 2 of them were unlawful. Congressman Trey Gowdy, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am, you too.
We will see you soon, Trey Gowdy. Still ahead, I'll be speaking with Senator.
Oh boy, all I know is something big is coming out. Q has said that. It's come out before the end of March.
New account of events that presents President Xi Jinping as taking early action to fight coronavirus, according to today's New York Times. But in doing so, the authorities there are also admitting for the first time that Xi Jinping was aware of the racial discrimination, xenophobia, all these things that will really harm our joint efforts to combat the virus.
All right, so this virus, really what happened, and I don't know if we can believe these sources at all. Really getting very difficult to believe anything that comes out of China or several media groups here in the United States.
Speculation and rumors. So far, at least 69,000 people have been infected with coronavirus. Over 1,600 have died.
Now they're saying over 1,600 have died. They say over 69,000 have been affected. So it's getting pretty serious, pretty serious. I believe they're going to be forced to do some other things that they don't want to do to get this under control.
Joining me right now is Senator Tom Cotton himself. He sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He has been speaking out about China's response to this fatal virus. Senator, it is good to have you today. Thanks very much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Maria.
And you were among the first lawmakers to really raise a red flag on coronavirus, warning your Senate colleagues nearly 2 weeks ago that this is worse than Chernobyl. Your words, not mine, that China has been lying about it from the very beginning. Assess the situation as you...
Worse than Chernobyl, and China has been lying about it. Wow.
know it today.
Maria, the situation is very grave, in part because, as you say, China was lying from the beginning and they're still lying today, and also because there are so many unknowns about this virus. For example, how many people one person can infect once they have the virus, the extent to which it's contagious before one is symptomatic, or the mortality rate. That's why I've been saying for almost a month now that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, to quote Benjamin Franklin, and why the president was so smart to ban travel coming from China just a couple weeks ago, so we didn't have more than 20,000 people landing in our country every single day from mainland China.
Well, you know, it's pretty extraordinary. And then
banned China 2 weeks ago. At least Trump was smart enough to do that. He knew some intel on that, and it's a good thing he did. They're going to be banned and quarantined for sure. That's good.
And they criticized the United States for putting that travel ban in effect. And the fact is they're criticizing us for the travel ban, but isn't it true that they've got people locked down in their homes?
Maria, they have more than 70 million people now under quarantine, and you've probably seen the videos online.
70 million under quarantine? 70 million under quarantine. China is going to have a serious economic disaster with this.
From social media sites, as have I, of the Chinese Communist Party's police beating people who they think might have coronavirus, or trying to keep them locked inside of their apartments, or quarantining them in large hospitals or what have you. They have not been transparent at all, and they need to be.
And this is one of the issues, because you had initially the doctor who was a whistleblower, in effect, who said, look, start wearing protective gear because we've got this coronavirus happening. He was arrested. He was shamed in the press. And unfortunately, now he's dead.
Yeah, this is a tragic story. Dr. Li Wenliang, who was an ophthalmologist who blew the whistle on coronavirus in early December. The Chinese Communist Party made him sign a statement disavowing that and threatening punishment. He later came down with the virus and himself has died, leaving behind a pregnant wife and a young child. He's become something of a martyr among the Chinese people, who, let's remember, are the first and the worst victims of the Chinese Communist Party's incompetence and dishonesty.
At the same time, we need to really understand why these diseases keep coming out of China. I mean, we remember SARS and MERS, and now it's coronavirus. We've been told that this originated in an open seafood market, where you've got a market that you've got bats and cats and pigs and all sorts of animals all at once. But there is also speculation that perhaps it did not originate there. Tell us what you know.
Yeah, so Maria, here's what we do know. This virus did not originate in the Wuhan animal market. Epidemiologists who are widely respected from China, who have published...
Okay, this did not come out of a market. There's rumors that it came from Canada through a biolab, medical biolab, or military biolab. It was transferred to China's biolabs and were created there. I don't know what the truth is, but he's personally saying that this did not come out of an open market.
Studied in the international journal The Lancet have demonstrated that several of the original cases did not have any contact with that food market. The virus went into that food market before it came out of that food market. So we don't know where it originated, but we do know that we have to get to the bottom of that. We also know that just a few miles away from that food market is China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory. That
a few miles from that market is biosafety level 4 industrial complex, military complex. Only a few miles away from that market. Wow.
Researches human infectious diseases. Now, we don't have evidence that this disease originated there, but because of China's duplicity and dishonesty from the beginning, we need to at least ask the question to see what the evidence says. And China right now is not giving any evidence on that question at all. So
this super lab that you referred to, this super lab is the only one of its kind in this area, in Wuhan, in the province, that area. And what do they do at this super lab?
It's unclear, Maria. We have such laboratories ourselves in the United States, run by our military, in large part done for preventative.
We've got such labs ourselves run by the military. Well, you know the military in China is running similar labs there.
Purposes, or trying to discover vaccines, or to protect our own soldiers. China is obviously very secretive about what happens at the Wuhan laboratory. We don't know, again, where this virus originated.
I had pharmacy.
It's so important that we at least ask the questions and get the evidence, but China continues to block our ability to ask those questions and get that evidence.
Blocking the ability to ask questions and to get the evidence. Good old communist China.
In terms of getting to the bottom of it, the Centers for Disease Control wanted to go into China. The U.S. has offered a lot of help, including sending the CDC in there to investigate exactly where this originated and how severe it is. But they said no, right?
That's right. The Chinese government has consistently blocked American scientists, who are obviously the very best in the world, from going to Wuhan, going to Hubei, trying to provide assistance to make sure that this virus is contained to the greatest extent possible, to discover its origins, to shed light on what that may mean for successful testing and vaccines. But the Chinese Communist Party continues to refuse that offer of assistance from the United States.
Now, the Chinese ambassador called the notion of biological warfare, quote, absolutely crazy, accusing you of trying to spread misinformation and panic. What's your response there? I mean, we don't want to create panic, but at the same time, people need to be educated in terms of what exists in this region in China.
Well, the burden of proof right now is on the Chinese Communist Party and the ambassador of China and his fellow communists. They have lied consistently about this virus from the beginning, so we should not take their word at face value. And no, we don't want to have a public panic, but we do want to err on the side of caution when so much is unknown, and that is consistently what China has not done. By consistently lying to its own people and to the world, they have created a situation where we have not been able to take the preventative measures that we might have, and we have not been able to err on the side of caution.
Tell me what the downplaying of this has done. In other words, the Chinese knew about the coronavirus back in November of 2019. They proceeded to send a delegation to the White House to shake everybody's hand, to do a phase 1 China deal. They sent the largest ever delegation to Davos at the end of January. Do you think the downplaying of this virus has actually exacerbated it?
Oh, there's no doubt about that, Maria. You know, the first cases indicated in early December, which meant they were transmitted sometime in November. China finally fessed up to the WHO on December 31st. If they had taken action weeks earlier, not only might their own people have been better protected, but the entire world might have been better protected. This is just a pattern of Chinese dishonesty from the very beginning, which continues to this very day. Just a few days ago, we went from a situation where they were reporting only a couple hundred more cases, or maybe 1,000 more cases a day, to almost 14,000 cases in a single day. That wasn't the result of any scientific discovery. That was a political decision to finally reveal what they knew to be true, yet they are still covering up, in all likelihood, the number of cases and deaths from coronavirus inside of China.
And do you think there's anything that we should be doing here in America to hopefully avoid what sounds like is a pandemic coming?
Well, again, I want to commend the president for shutting down travel from China. That was the most important preventative step we could have taken. It's very important that we empower our local and state health officials to test at the broadest possible criteria for anyone who's been to China or been in contact with someone who's China who's showing any indication of the symptoms of coronavirus. It's so critical that we do that, and that the CDC develop effective and quick testing protocols as well, so we don't have a situation where people are infected with the coronavirus but are told that they are not infected, as unfortunately happened just a few days ago in San Diego.
Senator, it's good to have you this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So that did happen in San Diego. How much did it happen in San Diego? I don't know. Again, this is a mess, and it's going to affect world economies, and especially going to affect China, trade with China, and commerce with China, and travel with China. No two ways about it. It's Roger Martin from Billings, Montana. This is Fox News Sunday with Maria Romo. Good day.